Hello, world, and welcome to the Innovation Coaching Podcast. My name is Klaus Hostel, and with me today I have Kim Slade. And Kim, tell me how I can help.
Klaus, good question. Right this second, I'm actually not sure how you can help, but I know you can because I know you. But I guess what I'm working on is starting this new business, which is creating office style cabins in nature for founders and writers and creatives so that they can get time away from their normal scenario, get inspired by nature, have zero distractions, and get like deep work done or creative work done in just like an environment that's perfectly designed for that.
And I love that. I love it. Just a shout out so everybody who doesn't already know what Kim does, these are called unlost dens. And they're essentially from an outside, you might explain it differently, but when I explain it to people, and I sometimes do, it's like camper van, just an office camper van. And you take it somewhere into nature, and it's your office space in nature. And it's not you trying to work from a camper van that's not fit for it. It's you working for from a camper van that's made specifically to be this outside office. How close is that to your reality?
Pretty close. Couple of slight variations on the reality, on my reality. But see how it's very easily perceived the way you see it. So it's actually a trailer, not a camper van, but close.
Sure.
And they're actually the first two are built from horse boxes, so old horse carrying boxes.
Oh,
And they're like trailers. And actually, I'm partnering with a part of the business that I haven't really communicated that well yet, is that I'm partnering with regenerative projects or regenerative landowners to give them an extra income stream and to have them permanently or semi-permanently. You know, they're mobile, but they stay in like a nice spot with a beautiful view and beautiful surroundings. So it's not like people borrow them and drive them around. They just go to them. So the idea is
nice.
it's immersed in nature, but close enough to home. So you can like get there in like 25 minutes from the city or 20 minutes from the city, and you can be just amongst the birds and the trees and the hills, rather than in the city. So that's pretty much the reality of it.
And that is so cool. Okay, but that is, I mean, when you first talked about it and I started seeing some of the pictures you post on LinkedIn, I thought this is awesome. You're onto something. Now
Mm.
we've done the plugging, which we should because
Cool.
it's
Yeah.
so commercial part not done, but on break for now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell me, there's what's cooking?
So I guess my next stage that I'm, trying to figure out is I've got a long-term vision for it, but I've got a short-term challenge of recruiting members because it's a membership, right?
Mm,
And the idea is that instead of people just being able to book it when they want to, like just random ad hoc bookings, I wanted to create a community and a membership around it of people who are founders and writers and creatives because I feel like that would be more value overall. And it's the kind of place where I believe it would be really beneficial for people to like work in regularly
mhm.
for that type of work, right? But I guess I've got so many like ideas around like how I could do the marketing and what I can do, and I'm kind of a little bit like paralysis by analysis in terms of all the ideas. I'm not short on ideas. I'm short on like prioritization and clarity around what ideas are going to be most effective, like in the right order, basically.
Oh.
So that's kind of what I struggle with at the
So
moment.
that is classic. Let's dive into that for a moment. And I think a place to start is I don't know if you've had a chance to see it, but a couple of years ago I wrote a book on pricing expertise with a Croatian guy called Filip Fucic, and we figured out we kind of developed these 40 standalone, can build on each other, but can also be seen individually, tips or mantras for pricing expertise. And one of the ones that I really love that Philip kind of came up with early on was of the void of maybes. And he said that what we call strategy, we have an illustrator, Igor Kola, who illustrated the book, nice illustrations, and he drew this lovely spaceship. And it essentially says the void of maybes is the void. It's dark and vast and empty, and it is endless. And what we call strategy is essentially somebody closing their eyes, and out of the 1,000 factors they could have taken into account, they choose three and say, these three matter, and we will now be guided by them. And that's what we call strategy.
Mm.
And that is so true, especially when you're at a place like you are, where you could go anyway, right? You could go anywhere, you could rent them out by the hour, you could get sponsors, you could have people pick them up, you could have them on a piece of land, you could have it as part of a bigger deal, you could have community, you could do so many different things, even with the unlost dens as they are, right? And if we say, oh, but what is an unlost den even, and start that discussion, then it just gets worse. And you're right now, it sounds like a little bit in the void of maybes. And the way out of that, and this was Philip's brilliance, was just saying, stop trying to think you can find your way out of the void of maybes. It is by saying, I'm going to close my eyes, I'm going to pick a couple of factors that I care about, and then I'm going to fly that way. Because any way in the void is better than just standing still. And then as you start going that way, you might find, oh, I'm going the wrong direction, or, oh, I need to pivot, or I need to change. But it starts by saying there's 1,000 things I could do. I'm now going to focus on just a few factors. Like, how do I make it easy? Or how do I make it cheap? Or how do I make it to a community? Or how do I make it easy to sell? Or how do you make it fun for you? Or whatever it is, think of a couple of things that are okay. If I had to choose something, then this is the master I serve. This is the most important stuff, and we'll see if we can figure that out.
I That's reassuring to hear because I feel like I've kind of started to do that already, but the trouble with that is when you get outside opinions and outside factors, right? So, for example, I was like, right, I've had a few businesses before and I've kind of become a little bit of a slave to them or not chosen the right business model. And now I'm like, okay, I get what a business is now and what I would like it to be. So I want to create this as a business model that for a few different things. One is like what I love to do. Like I love creating spaces and experiences for people and seeing that physically in the world. Two is I love getting people out into nature and showing them how that can have a massive positive effect. And three, I want the business model to be like recurring revenue and like not having to find new people all the time. And so decided to sort of craft this business fitting in with those factors. And then you get people saying, so I've put it out there as like, it's a membership, but then you say, you get people going, oh, can I book it for a week? And then you say, oh, I'm not gonna, and then you start getting all these external factors when you're like, okay, how much of it should I be listening to the market and what they want? Because originally I went out there with the offer, which is like, it's this much money, it's like £230, and you get it once a week, every month, right? And that's the offer. And then people started saying, oh, I don't really want it once a week, I might want it once a month. And so after a bunch of conversations, I was like, well, I need to listen to people a little bit. I can't be too rigid in my dream. I've got to like allow some flexibility. So I went, okay, I'll have it free styles of membership. And now I've got people wanting to book it ad hoc, and I've got people wanting to book it for a day or a week. Now I've got people wanting to bigger groups. And I think people really love the idea of what I'm doing, but I can't accommodate all of the things that people need from it. So I'm struggling to like stick to my guns. It's like finding that balance between sticking to my guns of what I want, of like those things in the void, and saying, no, I'm choosing this as my guiding principle of like, it's a membership and it works like this. And then you get all these other voices going, oh, you shouldn't do it like that, you should do it like this. And then when it comes to the marketing of it, I've got the same problem. I've got all these ideas for content and all this stuff, but then I was going to have a launch party, and then somebody else who I trust as an advisor said, you're going to waste so much time doing a launch party, you just need to go and sell. And someone else is like, no, you need to do this. And it's just like, in the middle.
I hear you. I hear you. It's not easy. One of the things about that is that I think you said something very crucial. You said, but you have to listen to the audience. Well, you don't actually. You can, and often it's a good idea, but the problem with audiences or customers or advisors is we all tend to say different things, right? And we all tend to think we're right. And to make it even worse, we all are right for us. We're not necessarily right for everyone. I've gotten feedback, the same mail. I sent out a mail, like a poke mail for our College of Extraordinary Experiences saying, hey, we haven't heard from you. Maybe you don't want to go anyway, or maybe we just couldn't reach you. Whatever it is, just let us know. And I had one person writing back saying, oh, Klaus, I love your emails. It's the best thing. I'm so sorry. I've been lazy. I really love the style. Thank you for that kindness and warmth. And I had another guy writing to the same mail writing, this is ridiculous. The way you communicate is not okay in business. Goodbye. Same mail, right? Same mail. And for one of them, it was very much a 5-star experience. For the other, let's just call it a 1-star and be generous about it. Same mail. Now, listening is good, but I think with something that you have at some point, one of these factors you need to look at if we want to get out of the void of maybes is say, I'm going to do it this way. And then instead of trying to make the people I know happy, I'm going to find the people who are happy. Right? If you say, because when I heard of it, I actually thought, okay, what's an obvious model for this? And then I went through a ton of different models in my head and thought, okay, this would do that, maybe this. And I realized if I was you, I would do this. You rent it on a monthly basis and you get to use it once per week. You get 1 day per week, and this is the cost, and here it is, blah, blah, blah. And that's how it is, period. And if you don't like that, that's your problem. And if I can never sell anything like it, then it's my problem. But until that day comes, then I'm going to spend the energy on trying to find the people who want that instead of trying to find the people who want something else and making them happy. Because I could see it being rented out on a weekly basis, or maybe for bigger groups, or maybe it's ad hoc. All these things also make sense, but they're much harder to control from your perspective because you want stability, recurring revenue, and not to deal with too many people. And that means ad hoc. Ooh, that's going to be tricky. It means renting it for a week. Well, that's cool, but then you need a new person the next week. And what if they want it in week 26 and so do the others? And or if you say, okay, if it might be hard to find those 7 people to rent it once a week, maybe even just 5, and you keep it free for the weekends for yourself and for whatever else it is. Yes, that's tricky, but if you can find those people, then you're good to go. Right? So I'd rather say, instead of the task being, how do I change it so it fits the people I know? How do I find the people who will like what I have to offer and then stick to those guns? Would be my advice.
I like that advice because it's why I feel like it's my intuition, but I think it then becomes the real issue then comes up, which is the self-confidence for that my intuition is going to actually work, and also the financial pressure of it working like in time, because I have like a runway which I'm working with of like, okay, it needs to get this many members by then. And then you have that pull of like, well, someone's offering me money to use it and it's sitting there empty. Isn't that silly to say no? And then, it's sticking to that gun of your intuition of that like once a week model and finding those people, but that might just take longer to actually find those people. Or maybe that's just a story I'm telling myself. I don't know, because the conversations I've actually had have been, those people. I've actually got, of the members that are there so far, there's actually quite an even split between the 3 models, which is once a month, once a week, or once a fortnight. There's actually quite an evenly split people. And yeah, so it's that real issue of like, have I got the confidence just to say, nope, this is the way it is, and that's it? Or I don't know, is it a confidence issue, or what is the issue?
Well, first off, I say, yes, it definitely is. 2, that doesn't mean it's wrong. And 3 is, I think if you look at it another way, if you say a third of them are already at the business model you want, the once a week, well, then you're already a third of the way there. You've already then,
Well, it's not full yet.
yeah, sure, but you've already proved that you have people who want this, right? So now the question is, can you find more of them? It's much harder if you say, I think it should work like this. I think I should do coaching where people pay me per month and then they can call me whenever they like, but the number is really, really high. Because I don't like hourly, I don't like weekly, I don't like ad hoc. I just want to be available, but then I want them to pay for a lot because I might potentially be able. Let's say that was my model, and I've so far found nobody who wants that. They all want per hour or per week or a program. None of them want what I'm selling. And at some point, then maybe I should look in the mirror and say, maybe Klaus, you're the wrong, was wrong here. But you've already proved you can find people who want this, because a third of the people you've found want exactly what you want to sell. So you're already there. The others are just your bonus opportunities. And I think that if you look at the people you have right now and say, instead of saying it's a third, a third, a third, say, so I've got these people who are already on board, and then I've got these other people who there are quite a few of who would like something else. But the most important ones are the ones who want what you're actually trying to do. And you have some of them, which means you know it can be done. Then the question is, how do you get more of them instead of saying, how do I jump to the other horse, or which is the right horse? Your horse is already running. You just have other horses that are going, come play with me instead.
There's another little factor in that the way that I've kind of priced it to reward me for, so the people who are using less time are paying more for that time. So when I then look at the model of the whole business model, I go, oh, so if I had, it's like I've priced it so it feels worth it to have those extra people who are taking a different package, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
But then also there's another benefit in which, you know me, Klaus, and I love to put on these adventures and these events, and the long-term game is still those, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's for the same type of people who are using the den, so it's more like part of like a longer strategy of a kind of product ecosystem, right? And so having a bigger group of people who use these dens, there is actually an added benefit to that, in that there's more people to refer people, and there's more people to potentially do other things with me later on down the line. So I think I've kind of come to terms with the fact that it's having 3 different membership plans is okay.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's definitely there's still some questions of what I truly want. Like, is that just those core people, that core offer, the thing I really want, and just the others are just bonuses for now? Or is it that I do actually want a bigger group of people in there?
I hear you. And that's definitely a factor, especially if there are other things at play. Now, the tricky thing here is that you cannot do all 3 models at once without them being a problem for each other. What you might do, if you had 3 dens, let's just say you had 3 unlost dens. You do, right?
With 2 now.
But let's say let's say you get a 3rd done. That means that you might have one of them for the regulars, the weekday version, the weekday den. Then you have one of them which is for the longer periods. So like the ones who want to rent it for a week, that's den B. And then you have C, which is for the ad hoc. That means you're serving all 3 types, even though they're all coming in through the same portal.
And then you give it some time and see which one feels good.
Ah, exactly. And then you find out after 3 months, okay, you still haven't gotten more than one guy who's there every Thursday, and he's getting a 50% discount because it's your brother. And that's really not working, but it's constantly rented out for people who want it for a week. And sometimes it's ad hoc, but it's a lot of mess, and it's cleaning, and they forget things. And oh, there was that couple that plugged out the power and suddenly it got invaded by raccoons. And that cost you 3 months of earnings. And then like, okay, I think I have my model now as a possibility, right?
Yeah. Yeah, gotcha.
Make it easy to test, make it easy to get to know. And I think, again, the reason, yes, it's a confidence issue, but it's also something different, which is tied a little bit to confidence, is it's very, not necessarily scary, but uncomfortable to learn to do something new. Right? When we did 10 years ago, we did the College of Wizardry role-playing event at a Polish castle with wizards and Harry Potter, and it was great, and we were all volunteers. And it exploded completely, and we got worldwide media. It was mad. And suddenly we had all sorts of non-role players who were not normally our target audience who wanted to go because they'd seen something about it on Fox News or in Die Welt or in Indian trade magazine. It was crazy. We had a fan club in Peru, right? So suddenly I was at the helm of this, and we were saying, okay, we want to do more of them. And then there were 2 approaches. There was the good approach and the bad approach. And the good approach would have been to say, hey, we've now done this as volunteers. I wonder what it would look like if we sat down and looked at the budget seriously and said, everybody who was a volunteer, what would happen if they got paid? Then that €280 price tag for 4 days at a Polish castle with food included and costumes and everything, maybe that's a bit too low. what would it need to be? Would it need to be 800 or 3,000 or where are we? And then learn how to sell to those people willing to pay that. That would be the smart way to do it. Naturally, I didn't do that. What we did instead was, oh, we have all these people, all these friends who paid 280. Maybe we could get them to pay 375. And then maybe the next time they can pay 400, and maybe next time they can pay 450. And then one day in the future, the glorious future, we will get to whatever break even is, right? Maybe it's 800, maybe it's 1200. We'll get there someday by maturing the market. And that way we don't have to do something uncomfortable, but like learning how to sell to new people. We don't have to say no to our friends. We don't have to say, no, it's too expensive. We don't have to learn how to meet these people who actually have the money and the will. We can just keep on doing what we're doing and be patient, which is a great strategy if you've got a lot of money. We didn't. That's one of the reasons I'm now in insane debt. Yes, working my way out of it, but still in insane debt because I made a decision that was super bad. I made many others that were bad, but that was one of the big ones. Was instead of saying, hey, what would be smart? And how do I learn to make that happen? I said, what would be comfortable for me mentally? And then try to make the world fit that.
Yeah, so just trying to, you didn't start with like the idea of how it has to be. You started with like what's kind of just possible now rather than thinking what needs to be possible in the end.
Yes, yes. And one of my favorite quotes, I read a lot of sci-fi from the like 60s and 70s, sci-fi anthologies from the 60s and 70s. And one of my favorite quotes is from a sci-fi novel called The Gripping Hand. And in it, there's these aliens from something called the Moat. It's this, this is the book number 2. And in book number 1, they meet these aliens. They're kind of scary, but they're bottled up in a small solar system. And the humanity has like a blockade on them. And at some point, somebody's thinking maybe some of them got out. What's happening? Because they hear some expressions that came from there. It's a whole thing. And in there, at one point, one of the characters says to one of the others, if we had some buruyaki, which is like some sort of science fiction dish, if we had some buruyaki, we could make buruyaki and menkuru if we also had some menkuru. And as a reader, you're thinking, okay, so if we had A, we could do A and B if we had B. But you don't have A, so why were you even talking about A and B? Because you don't have A, you don't have B, you have nothing. And you're saying if we had the one thing, then we could do the two things if we now had the other thing as well. And that's, of course, the point. And the thing is, when we are in business situations, especially when we're developing our small concepts, it's very tempting to think, I've got some buruyaki. I should do buruyaki and menkuru, even though I have no idea how to get the menkuru or even what that is, because I've got the buruyaki. Do I like buruyaki and menkuru? No. Do I know how to do it? Probably not. Is it the smart thing to do? No. But the moment we have just a glimmer of something, then we start thinking, oh, how do I work from that? Because we have it in the closet. Now, at least you're better than the people looking for the aliens. At least you're better than Commander Kevin Renner and the Honorable Horace Bury, because you're not saying if we had some buruyaki, we could make buruyaki and menkuru. If we had some menkuru, you're saying I've got this buruyaki. Maybe I should make buruyaki and menkuru. And then we ask why? Well, because I've got some buruyaki. Yeah, but do you like buruyaki and menkuru? Yeah, let's not go too deep into that because I've got the buruyaki. And I'm saying forget the buruyaki. Figure out what do you want to do? What dish do you want to make? And then figure out how to get the ingredients for it. Because the other thing is tempting. But it also means you're going to end up 2 steps down the line with trouble.
And I think that temptation comes when, and I love that. I love that story, by the way. And I see what you're saying exactly. And I guess my temptation to making, I can't even remember the words.
It's okay. That's okay.
But like the buruyaki, there's totally that like 50% of the words you just said were totally new words to my ears, but I actually understood the story, which is fun. But I guess the temptation of making what's there is because of financial pressures.
Yes.
And like you just mentioned, you know about that, right? But with when you have that, I'm kind of not quit what I've done before, but I'm like saying this is what I do now. And so I'm potentially cutting off some some
Yes.
opportunity over there, which has been the thing paying me, right? So I've got a certain amount of financial pressure added on top of this, which makes you make more decisions to just making the dish that's in front of you rather than like what I actually really want to do.
Yes. Yes.
So the navigation of that, it gets into your head, right, and makes you say yes to things, or makes you try and find a way to say yes to things rather than go, nope, that's not how it works. I'll find someone else.
Yes, exactly. And if we do it without the space words and say the moment you have spaghetti in your cupboard,
Mm,
then, and you're thinking, what are we going to have for dinner? Every conversation is going to start with, we could do spaghetti carbonara.
mm,
And then somebody says, yeah, but I don't like spaghetti carbonara, or we've had that too much, or we're trying to get away from that because we want less carbs or less wheat or whatever. And you're like, yeah, but we have the spaghetti. So what about some spaghetti carbonara? And as long as it's there, the nice thing is you can always make spaghetti carbonara. The annoying thing is you're probably going to keep thinking that until you decide maybe this spaghetti pack of 1,000 grams of spaghetti actually only cost me 2 pounds and it's keeping me from the healthy lifestyle I want. So maybe I should throw it out. But that's tricky. It's tricky with spaghetti carbonara at 2 points. It's even at 2 pounds. It's even trickier when it's something like the people you know how to reach. It's scary throwing out the spaghetti.
And I think that's what stopped me a lot when I was doing the adventure stuff more, because the kind of ideas and the things I wanted to do, the big things that I really wanted to do and I see so clearly and know would work, was like, I don't actually know anybody right now who could come on that trip, so it was then hard to just be like, no, I'm just doing this, because didn't feel like there was a way into it. Whereas with the dens, it's like, as you say, I do know that there's at least a couple of people who want to do what I'm doing, right? Want to take what I'm offering. So it is good. So as you said, it goes back to, I think the point really is having the faith in yourself to at least test what is the most ideal situation first, and then scale back from there, rather than go the other way around, try and work towards the ideal situation by just doing what's available next.
Yes, exactly. Because then you get stuck with the spaghetti carbonara or
Yeah.
the fictional Bruyaki and Menkaru
Mm.
in the land of space and alien, right?
So then I guess the question is, like, if I'm sticking, because it's reassuring to hear this, because I've had met a lot of the voices around me I've had saying, why don't we make the carbonara? Do you know what I mean? Like, I've had that.
Yeah,
That's been the
yeah.
approach I've had. Whereas deep down, I've been like, no, I need to. The whole point of me starting this whole new business is so I create something that I actually really want to put out in the world, right? Like more of a creation that I really feel like the world needs, or some people at least in the world need. So I felt quite alone in that stance. So hearing it from someone, you know, coaching or who's been through a lot of stuff is really reassuring to hear that it's more of a scary approach in my situation, but it is actually potentially the right one, more of a logical one in that from that sense.
Yes, and it just becomes that then the challenge is something else. Then the challenge is not how do I change the structure so it suits the people I know. Then it's fine saying how do I find the people who will like the structure,
Yeah.
which is also challenging, but it's a
Mm.
very, very different
Different
challenge.
challenge. So that's me. That's more where I'm at then, I guess. It's more
Yes,
like I'm like, right, what's the and again it comes back to that loads of ideas around marketing, podcasts and video content and freebies and partnering with people and all these different things, and it's like hard to decipher what is the most impactful thing to do first, because I can only channel so much out of the two hands.
of course, even with your massive video skills, you can only do so much, right?
Mm,
And that means that if you say, okay, this is what I'm doing, right? I'm not, this is your decision, not mine, even though I think you should, but it's yours, right?
mm,
But let's say you do that. Let's say you say, this is where we're going. I'm going to rent it out 7 days a week, and you can rent one day for X amount, and these are the available days. This is the price, this is the thing. Maybe the weekend is more expensive, maybe it's less expensive, maybe it's just the same, that's up to you. Then what you're looking for is 7 people. And you already have some of them, right? You already have some people who are interested. Then you're looking for 7 people. And if it's 2 dens, then it's 14 people.
Just to clarify the model, it's a detail that you probably we might not need to clarify, but it's like, so the way I'm doing it is splitting it into 2, I call them sessions, because what I'm trying to do for people is encourage balance in their life and actually getting the most important, like getting deep work achieved. So I'm saying go there for 5 hours and have the conditions, set up the conditions for success that you're going to concentrate on your writing or you're going to get this thing achieved. And then the other half of the day, go and spend time with your kids or go and have a fun time, right? So it's actually 2 sessions per day. That's the way. And so once a week is 1 session per week. So there's actually, if you've got 5 days, it's 10 sessions.
Sure. Same. But then it's twice the amount of people, but same principle.
Yeah.
Now, we could, of course, discuss whether that's smart or whether it's not. Is the payoff of needing to find twice as many people, is that worth it compared to now you're suddenly telling people how to live their lives? On the other hand, you're helping. There's all sorts of arguments both ways. But it's the same thing, right? Or do you need to find 5 or 10? You need to find a not too large amount of people, and then you're good to go. Now, is that scary and annoying and troublesome? Of course it is. But if that's the goal, and the nice thing about doing that, if you settle on that, that means now it's crystal clear what it is. There's like, this is the den, here's the location, here's what it looks like, here's the experience, here's how you engage with it. You can book 1 session a week, or you might even book 3 if that's your poison, but you're booking them as a subscriber, like as a tenant, so to speak. A tenant in the den. You might use different language, but that's essentially what it is. You're renting a portion of it you're renting the den for part of the week, and you're doing that week on week on week. And you have a minimum of 3 months or whatever that is, and you have a month to quit, whatever that is, right? But it's clear. And then people can say, I want that, or I don't want that.
Yeah.
And some of them might reach out to you and say, I want it, but I can only afford 80% of the price. Can we do something about that? And you can say yes, or you can say no. But that means that it suddenly frees you completely from thinking about what it is, because it's now crystal clear. And then you have to think about, how do I get more people to actually choose to do this? And from what you've seen, and especially from what I've seen on it, is that it's something that makes people excited. So it's a matter of, if enough new people hear about this, some of them are going to say yes, because it's a brilliant thing. Okay, then the task is not how do I get more people, it's how do I get more people to even hear about it? Well, that's suddenly a pretty doable task for a smart marketing guy.
Yeah.
And suddenly the void of maybes is not as dark as it was.
Yeah, definitely.
Would be my thinking.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that is where it feels like I'm at. And it's just, I think having talked about what we just talked about, the struggle that I have, that this has helped with this conversation, is that, you feel like, right, I'm set on this now, I'm doing that. That's how it works, that's how it is. And then you start getting the temptations and the things, and then you're like, am I doing the right thing? And you wobble from internally and from your course in your mind. And it's about sticking to your, holding strong, whilst you're getting people saying, but I'll give you hundreds of pounds for this, and I'll give you that. When you're like, the bank balance is going down, I'm still looking for these ideal people. It's like, where is, that's the challenge. The challenge is like sticking to what you feel is the thing, whilst you're getting all these other temptations come. Because people have really enjoyed, it's been amazing to see people's response, right? I posted some stuff on LinkedIn and got like masses of response, and I've had messages from like, do you want land here? Do you want to do this with it? Do you want to do that with it? And I've never had that realm before, where you're having to like, it's mostly like, how do I say no to stuff? Rather than like, that's the...
Yeah, and that's both wonderful, but also tricky. And I think the key thing here is that sometimes you don't stick to your guns because they're not hitting anything. But if you start hitting something, and like, okay, it feels good, it's actually working, I just need to work more, then the challenge usually becomes, now I know what to do, how do I get more of that, instead of what am I doing? And that's a completely different challenge. Now we're getting to the round off point, yeah.
Sure.
So you said a little of it already. So there's something you might want to repeat in a moment because I have two things here at the end of the podcast, which is standard for the podcast.
Cool.
One is to thank you. Thank you for having the courage and the openness to bring this not just to me, but to the people listening in. Pretty sure there are going to be some people sitting out there thinking, huh, I'm also struggling with the void of maybes. I don't know who this Kim guy is, but I can recognize that struggle. Huh, okay, maybe now I also have some inspiration. So thank you for that generosity. That is very, very nice of you
My pleasure.
and useful for not just me, but also other people, maybe even for you. And the second part is I want you to take a moment and then I want you to think of three things you take away from our conversation here. They can be positive, they can be negative, they can be things you're going to do, things you're going to think of. It can also be you just hate it. That's also okay. But three things that'll stick with you from this conversation and share them, of course.
I think the first thing that I kind of just touched on, but it was like, it's really reassuring to hear. I know this could be it's this funny thing to say, but it's really reassuring to hear people who agree with your where you're at. Like, because it's like I think when there's a certain type of person or thinker or personality that's like, this is the way I'm doing it, and everyone else wants me to do it a different way, but I feel like, but this is the way I've got to do it. And it's so hard to ignore those voices when they're people who are trustworthy and experienced, and but knowing that like it is a thing. And there's a few other times when I've heard the point of view like you've made about just going from the ideal first, right, and not just going to what's comfortable next. That when I hear that, I go, okay, come on, Kim, we can do this. Like, trust yourself, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing, which I guess is probably something that went through my mind, just been, I love being honest, and I like sharing out these. I've been trying to share my building of this in public, right? Being like, showing me warts and all, like bleeding fingers in a shed, building this thing as well. And so in that theme, like with this conversation, being honest, there was a part of it where I was like, oh, I wish I'd proposed a slightly different scenario to you in order to get, I guess, more further down the line in terms of the, like, okay, what's next? Like, okay, I've got this challenge now. Throw you some ideas of some of the marketing ideas and what feels like it's working. So there's a slight, but in contrast to that, for what I said a minute ago, the first reason, I wouldn't have got that first reason if we'd done the second thing. So I'm honest.
I hear you. I hear you. Yeah.
And third thing is, it's really cool to hear that it sparked in you, because I know you're an experienced guy and I love the stuff that you do, enough of a interest for it to be in your mind beyond just seeing a LinkedIn post about it, of you saying, oh, I thought about this, of like, what would the model be there? And this looks interesting. And it took you on a little thought path and it sparked your curiosity and some of your energy in thinking about it. That's really cool to know, because I think like if it does that for enough people, then as you say, it will be out there in the universe, and enough people, the right people, will find it. So that's a good reassuring thing I've heard from the conversation too.
It definitely will. And I think it's brilliant. I think I've been following you doing this, and I think you're on to something. And I think you're making it so low key and so accessible, right? You're not opening a 6-hectare spa office in the desert in Dubai, which is probably going to be cool, but it's a little bit of a higher buy-in. You're saying this is one thing, it's one place, it's pretty close, here's the price, it's not that high, blah, 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 blah. And you need your success right now is these like 10 people or so.
Mm.
And if that works, you can have 20 people and 50 people and 100 people. Then you might do one in a different city, or you might get somebody who's working with you to do the same in Paris or whatever it is. But it's so beautiful because the smallest building block is quite small.
Yeah.
And you're showing the way. And it's amazing. I really love that.
Cool. And that was part of the idea, really, that I could make something small, but that could be quite easily repeated like lots of different places.
Bingo. It's beautifully scalable, and that is really, really nice. And right now it's dependent on you, but in reality, it doesn't have to be at all. You could be running an unlost empire with unlost dens in 1,000 cities in a few years. I'm not saying that's necessarily going to happen, but there's nothing that theoretically stands in the way. Where no matter how much public speaking I do, I'm not going to do 1,000 talks, right? Unless I found some smart way of cloning myself where they're all done from digitally.
Holograms.
You 8 a day, right? Then we might talk. But in general, my speaking thing or my coaching is a limited resource because it's dependent on my time, where yours is right now dependent on your time, but it doesn't take a large stretch of imagination to see a time where you're marketing the business, but you're not building the things and you're not running them and you're not finding the people. And suddenly there's a potential empire. And that's far off right now, and maybe it'll never happen, but it's a pretty cool model you have.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's the thing that excites me most, that it can be something where, because I love getting into nature, as I say, I love like finding places, and to think that I know, like I feel like one day there'll be one by a beautiful lake, there'll be one up a mountain, there'll be one by the sea, there'll be one on an island, there'll be these things that I've created and built, and this experience for people to be had, to get great stuff, great work done, write their books, do all these things in cool places in nature. Just as I said, just combines everything that
Mhm.
I like and get excited about. So it feels right. It feels right.
And that can get you a long way when things get tough, because no matter how smart a decision seems from somebody else's perspective, if you agree to something and then when the going gets tough, you're like, yeah, but I agreed and it sounds smart, but do I really want to do it? Then often if you follow what you think is right, even if it's not that smart an idea according to other people, at least you're sticking with your guts, and they are very motivating when things get tough. Oh, it's a smart decision isn't really motivating when it doesn't work. It's really motivating when it works, but when you don't see it working, then it's much better that you're doing your own stupidity than somebody else's.
Yeah.
With that as our final remark, I'm going to say thank you, not just to you, Kim, but to all our listeners out there. And you've heard me, Klaus Ostel, you've heard Kim Slade, and this has been the Innovation Coaching Podcast. Thank you for listening.